when I was coming up with my speech, I asked my friend, well, you know, what are the tenets of good public speaking? And she was like, don't worry about it. Just come up with a really lighthearted icebreaker statement and intersperse some humor. And so I came up with one. The economy is in trouble. So this is true across the country, but especially here in California, right? In the past 25 years, we have gone from a AAA bond rating to an A-. That's the worst in the country. And what that means is that we've gone from the very best to just a step above junk bonds in just 25 years. What this means is that less people are investing in our bonds, which means we have less money to invest in our communities, and that's a problem. It means that the overall ranking agencies just think our costs are too high and our revenue is too low in order for us to be worthwhile. Our education system is also failing. That 1 in 4 students in California are reading on grade level, just 1 in 4. And among students of color, that's only 1 in 10. So we've got a real problem. What we know is that in order to improve our overall economy, we have to invest in education. Students that are well educated are more likely to complete high school. They're more likely to attend college and become productive members of our society. And so what that means is they start putting more money into our tax base. They're also less likely to be incarcerated. They have better social outcomes, and even their health is better, which means they're taking less money out of our government services. So this is really great, right? We get more money in, we put less money out. That's a healthy economy. Unfortunately, the problem is that right now in California and across the country, we don't have the money to invest in our education infrastructure. So, even though we know we'll get $16 back for every $1 we spend in education, we just don't have it. It's a vicious cycle. So here's the idea. Let's use schools as engines for a community renaissance. You guys are probably thinking, this woman's crazy. She just told us we're in a vicious cycle, we can't do it, and now she's saying let's do it. So there is good news. All we have to do is break the cycle by bringing money in from a different source. And I'm going to tell you how to do that in a minute, but let me start with a story. So in 2000, I started working for Mayor Anthony Williams in DC. You guys may not have heard of Anthony Williams, and that may be a good thing because he followed the mayor that you definitely heard. So we were facing a situation that's very similar to what California is in right now. Over 30 years, we had lost 25% of our residents. Our small businesses had shut down, jobs disappeared, and mostly middle-class families had left. In fact, we had only 50% of the students in our public schools that had once been there, 50%. And so we were in an absolute crisis. And what we needed to do was bring more money into our tax base. And usually the way that we could do that is to create more jobs, right? Unfortunately, you can thank Congress for this, we couldn't tax the income of people who worked in DC but lived outside. So, as a result, we had to bring more residents into our city. But how do you do that when the city has been so disinvested that there's blight and vacant buildings everywhere? Who wants to move into a neighborhood that looks like that? So we had to figure out exactly how to bring more money into our neighborhoods. Now, at the same time we're trying to figure that out, the charter school community was coming into its own in DC. Now, charter schools are publicly funded, open enrollment schools that take every kid in that comes just like a traditional school. But the problem is that when charter schools open up, they don't get a facility out of right. And so we end up with a bunch of kids who may be in great programs that are in education environments that are unsuitable. And so the great news on charters, though, is that because they don't have a facility, they can go anywhere. And they can go and locate in a neighborhood that may really need a boost. And so we created City Build. Now, City Build was the first program in the country that matched charter school growth with strategic neighborhood investment. Here was the idea. If we could bring a good school into our communities, our property values would increase $20 for every $1 we invested. We could create a long-term sustainable economy by raising the quality of education, and maybe, just maybe, we could also beautify our neighborhoods. And so the trick to City Build was, first, find a high-quality public charter school. There are lots out there. There's lots here in California. So Thurgood Marshall Academy happens to be the highest performing open enrollment high school in the city. When they started, they were in a church basement that would flood every time it rained. So great school, great program, and the kids are clearly in an unsuitable environment. What we figured out is that we could give them one of our government buildings that we didn't have the money to renovate, right? So we had all of these blighted government buildings, and we said, well, what if we just sell one for $1 to Thurgood Marshall? Maybe they could go and leverage their nonprofit status to get money from the private industry. That's exactly what they did. They turned the Nichols School from this to this, $11 million from private investment, non-government funds later. And so we didn't just do it in Anacostia for Thurgood Marshall Academy. We did it in 12 strategic neighborhoods across the city. We went corner after corner, from this to this. It worked. So here's the thing. Mayor Williams would absolutely kill me if I told you that this was the only economic development that was happening in the city at the time, right? But it was a strategic way to bring an enormous amount of private capital into our neighborhoods, investing in the long-term health of our society, but more importantly, bringing an immediate boost to our neighborhoods. So here's what we need to do. Think of it like a mortgage. You start with credit, right? You can't get a mortgage without having a good credit history. You then have a down payment to put down toward your mortgage. And then you need a steady stream of income in order to get it done. So credit for charter schools is not easy to come by because they're brand new nonprofits who don't have a credit history. So what the government can do is they can back the loans that the charter schools are going out and getting from the private market. This doesn't cost a cent to the California state government, not a cent. The only time that they actually have to pay for anything is if a charter school defaults on their loan. And guess what, in DC, in 15 years, not one has. The grant program or the down payment, you guys are probably thinking, well, that's government money. Doesn't have to be. There are venture capitalists out there that are willing to invest $1 million or $2 million in a high-quality charter school that's willing to locate in a good facility. There's even federal grants that are available to help charters get buildings. So why aren't we using that money to invest in our neighborhoods? And the last is a per-pupil facilities allowance. This is the ready, steady stream of revenue that schools get, right? Well, Governor Brown has introduced a proposal to move to a weighted student formula. A weighted student formula provides additional support to the schools who have special needs, like charter schools who have a need for facility money. And so that's it. Those are the three things we need to do to get immediate neighborhood help and invest in our long-term economy. And so the last thing I want to leave you with is two statistics to walk away with. In DC, we raised our resident base by 9% in 10 years. That's the fastest growth of any state in the country. And by the way, our property tax revenue went up 300%. 300%. Thank you very much.